level. Welcome to another edition of SchoolOwnerTalk.com. Now here's your host, Dwayne and Allie.
Hello, Dwayne Brummett here with Allie Alberigo, SchoolOwnerTalk.com. Good morning, Allie. Nice to be with you, sir. Oh, I got you muted. Sorry.
I said good morning to you and great to be back with you again. I think for our 290th episode, right?
It's something like that. Yeah, I lost count, man.
Holy mackerel. And we have a special guest today, a good friend of mine and traditional martial arts school owner. And you're friends, right? You guys know each other, right?
Oh, yeah.
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah, so we've done stuff together before and hung out. And Soke Dai is a good buddy of mine. We know each other probably for like 6 or 7 years now. It's been about.
9 years.
9 years. Crazy, right? And we met at a Atlantic City event, and we've kind of been in touch ever since, literally once a week chatting, you and I doing stuff, business together and so on. And great to have you here with us. And I wanted to pick your brain more about the traditional side of martial arts, right? You know, that there's so many different martial artists out there that are run different schools. So before I ask you any questions, Dwayne, what would you consider yourself? Are you a traditional school, a modern school? Like, what would you consider yourself?
I would say a little bit of both. I would say probably in the beginning, I was more traditional.
Mm-hmm.
I would still say I'm like 60-40.
Okay.
Yeah, 60% traditional and then 40%, some of the other stuff. And I guess we have to define what traditional means.
I was just going to ask you that question. Like, what is your definition? And then we'll let Soke Dai kick in.
Yeah, I mean, we are doing traditional Tang Soo Do with regards to the forms and the hand and foot techniques. And then obviously following some traditions with regards to obviously, yes, sir, no, sir, those type of things. Titles, not necessarily so much with the Korean titles, although we have ranks, but we're not necessarily addressing the ranks per se, only because, one of the problems I found for me was, being a Christian and running a Christian martial arts school. When I was a master, some people had a problem with the word master, so Master Brummett, I was like, just call me Mr. Brummett.
Right.
And so now all my instructors are really, we go by their titles, but I'm still by Mr. Brummett rather than by some sort of title. That was the only hiccup I found. But other than that, I would say we're pretty much traditional in those senses. But we use the English terms as opposed to, sabonim, that type of stuff.
Right. So Soke Dai, I know that you and I are more linked classically as far as our lineage to Japan, and you're an Asian accredited martial art teacher and school. So what's your vision of tradition? I know this is a debate. Like the other day I was on one of the pages and I was talking about tradition and people said, why don't you just go back to Japan if that's the way you teach? And I'm like, well, I do teach like I lived in Japan. Like when I learned in Japan, I keep those traditions alive. And I want to teach them to my students. I mean, that's one of my, and I use this loosely, a selling feature of who I am and what we do. But what are your thoughts?
Well, I mean, look, tradition is the preservation of certain cultural and systemic practices, right? From a definition standpoint. And this is you can go back and forth with this and discuss this for at length for hours, really, if you wanted to. So, one thing you have to keep in mind is that martial arts are military arts, right? It's not that they're just from Japan or China or wherever they're from, but they were martial, whether they were martial arts for the commoners or martial arts for the military. Originally, these are martial means military, so military arts,
right?
And so, there are certain customs that are preserved in order to keep the integrity of the art intact. And that's why there are titles, and that's why there are bowing and yes, it's for respect also, but there's all these different traditions,
the
protocols,
right, and etiquette.
And etiquette.
So
and I think that these things are important because they get you in the proper mindset for practicing the martial arts. I think that, and look, if you are not a traditional school, that's totally cool. That's what resonates with you, and you have to do what feels good to you. What's in alignment with who you are as a person.
Right.
And so I'm not saying that one is necessarily better than the other. This is just my personal belief and my preference. But I feel that in my own experience, that these traditions, these practices help get you kind of engrossed into what it means to be a martial artist.
Right.
It's like if you go to the gym and only pump one arm, and you're only lifting weights with one arm, you're kind of imbalanced. And so I think you have to always have that mental aspect, not just the physical. And in so doing, and trying to maintain that spirit and that mental aspect of the martial arts, because I think most experienced martial artists would agree that the mental side of it is very important to being able to defend yourself in a fight, to to just surviving long term in the martial arts. You have to have a certain mindset, which or develop one over time.
Right.
So I think if you don't practice certain traditions, I think that it kind of takes something away from the experience. With that being said, the other side of the coin with this is, traditions are changing over time, all the time. So our instructors, as time has passed, picked and choose what traditions they felt were meritorious, were important. Are they, so that the traditions of today may be different than the traditions of the past if you don't have a teacher that has been resolute in preserving the original customs. So it reminds me of this story, and I'm paraphrasing it, but there was a woman who all growing up, every Thanksgiving they made a ham,
Oh,
and
yeah.
she would cut the ends off the ham, the mother would, and then the woman grew up and she had her own household and her own family, and so she cut off the ends of the ham, and and eventually her daughter says, why did you cut the ends off the ham? And the mom said, I don't know, my mother did it this way, and so I wanted to preserve this tradition of doing it. And so one day she went to the woman went to her mom and said, I've always wondered, why are you cutting the ends off the ham? What's the tradition behind this? And she said, oh, my oven was too small. I had to fit it in the oven. So I cut off the ends,
Right.
So, was it really a tradition or was it necessity, or, why do we do what we do? And if you look at one of Morihei Ueshiba, the founder of Aikido's quotes, and again, I'm paraphrasing, but he says the techniques of today will be different than the techniques of tomorrow, meaning that things are always evolving as time goes on. So you have to adapt with the times, and you have to keep in mind that, look, fighting has evolved. Today, I think from mixed martial arts and these other things. I think people are coming at combat a little bit differently, and so you have to at least appreciate that this is going on, and so you have to be prepared for that kind of thing. But
Right.
but I still think that tradition is you've got to preserve the original methods, because
Right.
they work. Things were really survival of the fittest, historically. And so if your system didn't work, if it wasn't effective, then it died out in battle, right?
Right.
You died in the battlefield.
Yeah.
And so there was merit to whatever they were doing. If your system was lasting a long amount of time, that's because it worked. And so who are we to change it? I don't feel like, even though I have experience in the martial arts for decades, I don't feel that it's my right to change the tradition. I want to preserve it because it obviously worked this long and it served me well. So why reinvent the wheel?
I love that's a good overview of what tradition is. I like what you said. Dwayne, any thoughts or comments or questions on that? Oh, you're muted.
No, I'm not one to buck tradition, but I do like the fact that you said that what works now is not going to necessarily work later on. Like it has to evolve, which I think is good. I think if we just pigeonhole ourselves and just use one way and not be open to some other ideas, I think that's a detriment to ourselves. I think that's a detriment to our students. It's not to say that I would switch. I might learn something from you and go, man, that works a lot better than what I've been doing. I'm gonna incorporate that. Which I think I've always done in my martial arts career. Even if my instructor said we've got to do it this way, I would ask why. Like, why do we have to do it this way when this other way seems to work better?
Yeah, I like that. And I think though, here's the thing. I think that we haven't, as Westerners, experienced, a lot of us haven't experienced real martial arts from the Orient. So like being around a real true master is like night and day from seeing someone who's great or good even. So there's a lot of a difference when you can almost see, like, for example, I was teaching at a Masters Unite about 2 Sundays ago and Saturdays ago, and I teach a wrist lock and I teach it my way. And my way is very effective. Everyone knows that. And however, people will take it and they'll immediately adapt it to how they know it. And they see what I did and I'm showing them the pointers, but then they went right back to doing it their way. And then it's less effective. And I'm like, if you would just take, and I kind of told the crowd, I'm like, listen, I know you're good at what you do. That's not why you're here. You're here to learn from other people. So just kind of take what I'm doing and practice it and try it. And if it works, you could take it back to the laboratory, so to speak. That's what I call it. And you could practice it out and make it work. But so many people are kind of stuck in their way that they don't want to see anything else, right? And there's an extreme difference. I've seen some magical masters from Japan, trained with them in Japan, and it's like night and day with what you would see in the U.S. with masters in the U.S. So there is that land of tradition that's helping them stay alive, and those techniques are amazing. But there's so much more to tradition, right? I think it's about protocol and etiquette and all of that. And I think nowadays people are bucking that. Like they don't want to do it because it's so rigid. And so I'll give you an example. The other day I was having a conversation with my leadership team and I was reading an article on a vegan page and the guy said, I'm 75% vegan. And I said, you can't be 75% vegan because the very essence of veganism is that you are fully 100% committed. If not, you're just plant-based or you're vegetarian, but you can't like eat animals on a Thursday and, so you're 25% vegan, 25% not. I go, you either live the lifestyle or you don't. So I was talking about that in leadership team. And of course, one of my students who's in his 30s, he said, yeah, but there's various levels of veganism. I said, no, there isn't. It's just the guy who invented the term laid out a guideline and rules. You can't eat animals, you can't eat animal products, you don't wear leather, you don't use anything, then that's the rule. That's it. He says, yeah, but there's just still different levels to it. I go, no, you either are or you aren't. You could be plant-based, you could be vegetarian, you could use those levels, but once you claim to be a vegan, you're this, right? And he just he didn't agree. But that was his mindset. They're so used to at that age bucking the system and changing what it means and changing the values that the whole world has changed because of that. Does that make sense? What do you think about that?
No, totally. I think you have to be committed to your method, and in order to be considered that, if you are eliminating, some of the techniques or you're eliminating some of the tradition, is it really, can you call it that? If you are a karate practitioner, let's just say, and you take out the bowing and you take out some of the fighting techniques and maybe you remove some of the kata, well, then it's no longer the original thing,
Right.
you know, and so you can't claim to be that. And so, you know, just like if you're a traditional martial artist, you follow the traditions.
Right.
And I'll tell you, although I'm very open to different concepts, I don't modify my system. I don't change my rank requirements. My formal rank requirements are the same, you know, as my teacher taught me and as his teacher taught him, and so on and so forth. I may teach extra things, and I'll say to my students, this is extra, and it may not be part of the core system, but I think it's important to know this concept.
Right.
So they know very clearly what is this system and what is kind of bonus and extra, you know, information.
Yeah, in Japan they would call that a henka, right, which is a variation of the movement, right? So, but Dwayne, how about you? Like, what do you think about like that? So, take your Christian faith. I mean, we know that certain people claim to be Christian, yet we look at their actions and it's not very Christian-like, right? Or you know, they say, "Hey, I'm a Christian on the weekends," but not, you know, and during the week they're drinking, cursing, being violent, like whatever, and then you can't at that point follow and say you're a Christian. It's like I always tell my students, if you're a cop but you steal on the weekends, you're a criminal throughout. Like, you're no longer being a cop. You're not following the rules of law. You're breaking them. And there's so many gray areas. What are your thoughts on that? Like the rigidness of, you know, religion, protocol, martial arts, and that kind of thing.
Yeah, I would just say, you know, a hypocrite is just not himself on Sunday.
Right. Right. Yeah.
I mean,
yeah.
You know, it's that's a fine line. I mean, who am I to judge whether somebody is a Christian or not? You know, whether they're struggling through some sort of something or other. You know what I'm saying? But I just know what, you know. For me, I know what God's word says. I know what I'm supposed to do, what I'm not supposed to do. I mean, I still fail on some things. Don't get me wrong. When I step my toe, there's a few words that I want to say, and sometimes they do come out. You know, so you know, I'm not perfect. You know what I mean? But but I think tradition is super important with regards to you know, what the original intent is, you know. So there's got to be context, kind of like I really like what you said, David, with regards to the fact that you know, I'm going to teach the system the way that it was taught to me, and then anything outside of that is going to be one, separated, so they know that it's not a part of the system, but then two, you're not opposed to going, hey, by the way, here's some alterations to you know, these techniques, but they're outside of our system. And I know you're maybe not saying it directly like that, or maybe you are, but either way, you're making it a point to let them know that, you know, these concepts are important too, but they're just not the way that we necessarily do it. Am I getting that right?
Yeah, I think he just typed in to me that he can't really hear you. I don't know why. I mean, I hear him fine. It's okay, Di. So you don't hear him at all? You hear me? You don't hear me either?
No.
Maybe you muted the sound or something, or?
I wonder why.
Yeah, that's weird.
Do I sound better now?
I can't hear either one of you.
Really?
So that's odd. Something happened on your end that you can't hear us, and maybe you muted it. Let me type it to him.
Okay. Yeah, because I was hearing him perfectly. Can you hear me now?
Check. No, I guess not.
That's funny.
I'm gonna say sign out and sign back in. Weird, right?
Yeah. Well, that's technology. I mean, my video wasn't working for a while, so.
Yeah, and there you go. That's so something. He just said, okay, he's going to sign back out and sign back in.
Okay. But
yeah, so Dwayne, while we're waiting, so there's no dead airspace. It's interesting to me. Like, I look at people, for some reason, the more modern day, younger generation, they don't really see a value in a lot of the things that I hold very dear to my heart in traditionalism. And I use that actually as I don't want to say selling feature, Can you hear us now?
Now it's perfect. Sorry about that.
Interesting.
Yeah.
That's okay. These things happen. I was just saying that I find now that, I use my traditions as a selling feature. So that when parents come to me, I'm saying, listen, we're a very classical, traditional martial arts school. I then go into, a little tooting of my own horn and go, listen, I've been to Japan 17 times. I trained with one of 2 ninja masters in the entire world and lived in Japan. And I want to teach the traditions. It's funny how I watch even the younger generation, like even my head instructor, sometimes he's forgetting, like he loves to grapple. So like his posturing is very grappling, like, and the way he leans in and I'm like, these things that he does are not really part of our core tradition, but they're things that we teach because we want them to be able to grapple just like BJJ guys do and all that. But I think that a lot of the essence of martial arts in general have been, I'm not saying are being lost, they have been lost in time. When I met Steven Seagal for the first time, 1990-ish, 6 or 7, I asked him and I interviewed him and he said, there are 3 segments of the martial arts. He says, they're going to be the traditionalists, then they're going to be the sport martial artists, and then they're going to be just pure self-defense people. That's it. And like, he considered sport like sport karate, MMA, and all that. He said the traditional martial arts are being lost, where the ancient master could like do things that you'd say were magical, right? Because he studied him to be such a great martial artist for 40, 50 years, that kind of thing. So what are your thoughts on that? I know you have some relatives that you train with and your sensei still to this day. What keeps you in training with them? Why haven't you broken off and started your own system? I know you're super rigid where I'll go, how come you don't have your own video series? Like, nope, I'm not allowed to share techniques. He said, I can't put my techniques online, and you don't do anything against what his rules and regulations are. You're very loyal and dedicated. And how, tell us a little bit about that and why.
Well, I was always that was always instilled as part of my training, is loyalty to your teacher, because, they are in some respect holding your life in their hands. Not only figuratively, but literally sometimes, you have to trust them that, because I was their uke many times. And, so for those of you who don't know what that is, a throwing dummy. And so, I had to trust that, they weren't going to injure me. And, and sometimes it happened, but I have total trust in my teachers, and if you don't have trust in your teacher and you don't feel like they have longevity, why are you with them in the first place? And I feel like, in order to really become a master, like you're talking, like those in Japan, you have to commit very long term to
right.
and to a system. That's why I think the whole concept of mastery in general is being lost, not only in the martial arts, but in our culture. Who spends 40 years, perfecting something? Very few people. Most people can't even stick 6 months into something, and then they so I agree with you, your past statement that things are getting lost, and I don't want to lose those things, and I see the ability of my teachers, and they always have new things to teach me. Like I said, I've been doing this over 40 years, and they still show me new things that I'm like, wow, where did that come from? And, why would a teacher give their best stuff to a student who's not committed to them? It's like, and I tell my students this, if you want to learn how to make chocolate and you go to Mr. Hershey, right? And Mr. Hershey, you say to him, look, I would love to learn how you make chocolate. Please teach me. Right. And he says, okay. And he starts teaching you. And then maybe 6 months in, he says, listen, Mr. Hershey, I appreciate it. Can I also learn with Mr. Nestle? Do you think Mr. Hershey is going to teach you all of his best recipes if he knows that you're going with someone else?
Right.
And so some may say, well, that's not fair because, I should be able to learn from whoever you want to.
Right.
And you can. But if you want your teacher to be committed to you and to give all of his best information, then you have to make the choice to be committed.
That's kind of funny that you say this, because I had a student that was a great kid, and the dad and mom I just couldn't get along with. I'll say it nicely like that. And they were, when they were up for renewal, the dad went through my contract. He redlined all these things that he wanted to change, and I just said no. Then that was his excuse for me, because he knew I'd say no, so he could pull his kid out. And he also said to me, he goes, and I'm training in like 3 other dojos. And I said, well, that's another reason why your daughter can't train with me, because it's not fair to her. I said, she's going to be confused, and she's never going to truly master what we do. So it's better that you just move on to those other schools. And, he said, oh, that's condescending, and that's your attitude and your ego talking. And I'm like, no, you just don't understand that, and exactly what you just said. Why should I share when they're not dedicated to it? And we have to be real careful. But then again, in this society, people don't think the way that they do. And I have to teach my students how to think the old ways, the traditions.
And money does not mean that you're entitled to everything.
Right.
There are times that, I did like housework and other things for my teachers. I remember going and helping move things and
right, yeah,
and do research for on totally unrelated to the martial arts thing.
Yeah,
my teacher has called me up and said, David, I want you to look this up for me, and I want you to get back to me. And I did. And I don't ask for any monetary compensation, because the martial arts training and the information that he's imparted on me has been the payment.
Right. Well, go ahead. I'm sorry. Go.
No, I was just going to say that, the tuition is just to keep the doors open, but it's not, it's showing up to class every day, and or every week, and training hard and showing your commitment to your teacher. That's the payment for the techniques,
Yeah, there's a Japanese word called giri, and that means loyalty. It's such a confusing word. And I wrote an article once. I was talking about it on the internet, and then Stephen Hayes, Grandmaster Stephen Hayes, Anshu, world famous martial artist, he wrote, it's the society is more of a gimme rather than a giri lately, right? And then he went on to write some cool things that I then incorporated into my article. And a lot of people have a hard time understanding that loyalty. Like, I only have a handful of students that have trained with me over the years that even if they stop training, that are still loyal. Like on my birthday, they'll call me. On Christmas, they'll give me gifts. And they have just developed kiri, but it's a very small amount, because we're in this very commercial society. Mm-hmm. And I just wish more people would understand that, because it makes you a better person.
I think so. Definitely.
Do you agree, Dwayne?
Yeah, most definitely. I mean, I'm showering you with gifts all the time.
You certainly are.
No, I mean, you're right. I mean, it just shows a level of appreciation and dedication to that relationship that you have with the individual.
Yeah, certain cultures are like that. Like I believe they're Sikh. Their cultures, their religion is Sikh, and the parents used to every Saturday bring myself and my instructor breakfast. They go to stop off at Dunkin' Donuts and bring us stuff, and they would go, here, Sensei. Like that was their tradition, to bring the teachers a gift and to pay thanks and homage or homage or however you say it, to give thanks. And but not, our cultures aren't like that. A lot of times in the U.S. they think, hey, I've paid my debt. I've given you my $150 in tuition. Now you owe me. And if you don't want to give me what I think I deserve, I'll just move on to the next school. Like, and I believe, and this is another thing with this poor kid that the dad and mom pulled them out of the school. I believe they missed out on such a great education that could have been life-changing. But now, of course, I'm the bad guy and they moved on. But they'll never see the layers and levels that they could by dedicating themselves to a training and to a sensei or to a system.
Yeah. That's their choice, though. They're choosing to not get that benefit, and that's totally okay. I used to think that we have to accommodate everyone and make everyone happy, but that doesn't work.
Right.
But if you are kind of a lighthouse and you kind of live a certain way and set that example of what you want others, what you want to live by, I think those who are in alignment with your principles will find you, and those are the people that you want anyway as a customer.
Yes.
I think that to try and force everyone to be something that they're not, it never works out well. And that's why, I get people that come in and then they leave, and that's totally
Right.
cool, because they're not in the same alignment that I am.
Yeah.
And then I have others that have been with me for 15 years, and those people really get it, and
Yeah.
and if they change their mind and come to a certain point where they're not in that space anymore, and they don't have that belief anymore, then they're going to move on, and that's their choice. We can never control anybody. We can only set example to how others could live and what they could achieve.
Yeah, and I think I don't know about you, but I would like 150 to 200 dedicated students, and and that's it. I'm like, I don't even need the door to be rotating. You know what I mean? Like, it could just be those 100. Let's just say 150. Those 150 people, and I don't want to say life would be good, but life would be wonderful with regards to the fact that they would be dedicated. They're going to show up. Your relationship with them is going to just get deeper and deeper and deeper. There's just so many more benefits, just even besides the technical aspect of the martial arts. And you become a family where you guys support each other, and that's not even a thing anymore. Are there martial arts families anymore? I mean, really?
Yeah.
Well, it used to be.
I agree, like 100%. Like, that's something that I miss from when, like, I had, like, when dojo first opened, we were like hardcore group of like 70, 60 people. But the real core group was like 20 or 30. And I would go every Friday night. We'd all go to the movies together. We'd go to a restaurant. We'd go to the movies. We would hang out. If I said, hey, we're going to this seminar, I just immediately knew I was bringing 40 people with me, because they would go to everything and anything that I say. Now, I had a big seminar I just taught recently, and it seems as like a suggestion to them. Like, hey, you guys should all come. It's life-changing. And it's almost like I'm sales pitching it. And meanwhile, years ago, would have been like, hey, sensei. And they were there. Like, right. My teacher, Sensei Felix Vasquez, was at this last event that I taught, and I trained with him. And, we'd have to go anywhere he said, dressed in a 3-piece black suit, head to toe, and follow him. And he was at this event with 12 of his students. They all paid to go to the seminar, and not one of them trained. They just sat on the side and watched in full suit and mask. That's only because he said, we're going, and they must, or else he'll be done with them. They couldn't train anymore. So that tradition is still alive with him. And I remember that. I loved that about it. It was something that I sincerely missed, when the students were so dedicated and they would do anything for you, clean the dojo, come over. Hey, I heard you're doing construction. You need help, and they'd be there, like, whatever. Or you're carrying your bag and boxes. They'd grab it from you. I have to teach those skills, though, to my students. Like, it almost sounds disingenuous, but I have to, like, say, this is the way you're supposed to act. This is what you're supposed to do. These are the traditions of how you treat your instructor, and how you work, and how you live your life in the dojo. Does that make sense?
Oh, yeah.
So check this out. I'll ask your opinion. On the other day, on one of the Century Post pages, they had a big debate on what they should call their instructors. They want to educate the kids on whether the teacher is non-binary, he, they, she. I don't even know it all. I tried to look it up, and it's so detailed right now as we're talking, but they wanted to know what we should call our teachers. And I'm like, why don't you just call them sensei, or sabanim, or coach? You don't have to identify their gender and what their gender choice is. You just pick the name. You're a teacher.
And none of those terms do that anyways.
Exactly. So I'm like, why can't you just do this? And people are, no, we have to educate. I'm like, it's not your job to educate your students on sexuality. In my opinion.
No.
Like, it's not something, right? So, but like, why can't they just stick to the tradition of being a sensei, or a coach, or a sabanim, or a sifu, right? Like, what is going on with our world today? I don't understand it. What do you guys think?
Well, what does gender have to do with training? I don't think it has anything to do with it. So
right.
why bring it into the dojo?
Right.
Right. I treat my women in my class the same exact way as I do my men. They are expected to do everything that the guys are. So why Why do I have to? I think by pointing that out, you're kind of creating more of a segregation than if you just treated everyone as a student instead of a guy, girl, he, she, they, whatever. If you
Right.
just treat them like people, then great. Then it works.
Yeah.
You know? So I'm in agreement. I think, yeah, call them by their title. You know?
Well, and I also think that everything is an issue now. I mean, you know, in order to be in control, in order to be the top dog, right, or in order to be the winner or whatever, you have to create an issue that you're passionate about and make everybody else feel bad about or dog them out on.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Like that's all it is. I mean, it's more than that, but I mean, in that aspects, it's you're making an issue out of something that doesn't need to be an issue. Like you said, you're a student.
Yeah, I don't know why I would want everyone. I wouldn't want to sit down with youth kids, even, you know, older kids, and have to have that conversation. I don't feel that it's my business to talk about that. Anyways, that's what I said on this page, and some people argued with me, but I'm like, okay, that's just my opinion.
You're better than me because, like, I wouldn't even waste my time
Right.
posting about anything on that. I just it's a non-issue. I think that they win just because I posted.
Right.
Well,
right.
Yeah, I mean, you're not going to change their mind. They're not going to be like, "Oh my God, suddenly I see the light." Right? They're just there to argue. So why?
Yeah, I guess.
You know.
Yeah, it started.
Because Allie likes to argue. That's the thing.
I don't like to argue.
I've seen him in action.
No, I like to debate.
Yeah, that's true.
That's true. Like, I've always been, you know, interested in debating, even if it's something that I would debate even on the opposite side, just for the practice of debate, right? Like, even if I believed in it was white, I would argue it should be black, just so I could learn how to debate better. So, but I hate arguing, but at the same, because it's more of an aggressive kind of nature where people end up hating it. And that's what happens, right, these days. If you don't agree with someone, they hate you. They put you down. They make fun of you. They cause trouble. So
well, it's all race. It's sex. It's maybe religion. It's whatever. I mean,
politics.
Yeah, and which is funny because, I mean, if you stop and you think about politics. If you stop and you think about it, everybody's been fighting for everything for centuries, right? To be one. I think we have in the United States of America, we have the best ability to be one, yet we're still fighting to be one. And look, I've, you know, I don't know what it's like to be black or Hispanic or Asian, or, you know what I mean? I mean, or Indian, with regards to like American Indian, that type of, like, I don't know what that feels like. You know, I was teased as a kid for different things. I don't know. I don't think I was ever teased about my sexuality. I wasn't teased about the color of my skin. You know, that I can remember, but there was, you know, a lot of other things I was teased about. But I guess where I'm going with this is, you know, I can't relate to some certain experiences. Can't do it. I understand that. But I also know that if I live how I felt when I was teased about those other things, because I can remember going to the bus stop in 5th grade.
Right.
This was back when bandanas were a big deal. And there was two kids at the bus stop would always take those bandanas, and they would tie little knots at the end of them and get them wet, and they would whip me. I would have welts on my thigh going into 5th grade and I wouldn't say every morning, but quite every morning. If I looked at myself as I was a victim, but if I adopted that mentality, I don't know I would be where I'm at today. Like, oh, woe is me all the time. I get it. I was a victim of that. And boy, I've opened up a can of worms just by what I'm saying already, I'm sure, you know, and that's why I'm trying to say, I don't know whatever, you know, I don't know everybody else's experiences. I just know that for me, I have to look at the bright side of things. I have to look at the future, and that it has a potential to be brighter, because otherwise, I don't know about you guys, but, you know, I think our nature is to, you know, look at the bad things all the time and not the good.
Well, I think also, what you put your attention towards grows. So if you always focus on the negative, that's going to grow in your experience.
Yes.
And, and you'll see it everywhere.
Yeah.
And if you focus on, the positive and the things that are growing in your life and things that are, you're accomplishing, you'll attract more of that. And
Right.
so what are you choosing to spend your energy on?
Yeah. I had a lady just recently that reached out to me that from years ago, she used to suck up my time. She was an energy vampire. Hey, at the time her mom was alive, very abusive. She had all the excuses in the world to have a terrible life. And I would say, do this or do that. And I can't, this won't work, that won't work. So I finally got tired of it. I even said to her, buy my book. It's like $6. No, I can't afford it. I'm like, and then I finally got done with spending time. She just last 2 days ago reached out to me again. I don't know why I don't see your stuff because I unfriended her on Facebook. But she's asking me why I'm so blessed to have a wife and a family and all this stuff. I'm like, it's because I look at the positive and not the negative, and I focus on the positive. So I think she thought she could open up the floodgates, and she started talking about how bad her life is. The same stuff that I said to her, the same exact stuff that she told me 2.5 years ago. I said, literally, I could have copied the conversation and put it right back in. They don't want to listen and change their ways. But so we're moving along. So let's quickly just ask a few more questions on tradition. So how do you separate and I kind of know this answer, but I'm going to ask it anyway. But how do you separate business and tradition, or how do you incorporate business and tradition so that you're not feeling like you're selling out? And you and I have had we've worked on this over the years.
Oh, yeah.
Right. Where I go, you should do this. And you're like, nah, that's not what I do. It's not my tradition. It's not something and then we'd work it out so that it works for you. But how do you do that now? And what's your advice to people that maybe struggle saying, like, as a traditionalist, I can't do this?
Sure. Well, firstly, you can do it, and I have done it. And, I am very, as you know, and as you said, very resolute kind of in my practice. I don't compromise very much in kind of watering down my techniques or changing my curriculum because I think it's going to sell better. I keep things pretty close to the way that it was taught to me.
Mm-hmm.
But what people have to realize is that business is a separate art unto itself, and then the martial arts. And so if you're training so hard to be a great martial artist, and you don't spend time understanding business, then your business is going to fail. You're a black belt in martial arts, but you're only a white belt in marketing and in these other things.
Right.
And so one thing is understand how business really works. What attracts people, how do you get more people in? How do you retain, how do you sell and get people on your team that know more than you do and do it better? I hate doing computer stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And so I hired someone to do the phone calls and do, and then I hired someone else to do the Facebook marketing and, Gus, I use him and he's good. And, so I have people help me when I first did that, I was scared of spending the money because I was like, oh God, I'm not making that much. But, what I was doing wasn't working. So I had to trust the people that were getting results to do a better job than me so that they could bring me in more students and do that aspect. So in part, what I do is I get other people who are more skilled than I am to do the things that A, I'm not good at, or B, don't want to do. And I focus on maintaining the integrity on the mat. But I do understand the workings of every aspect of my business, but I don't give out like trophies, and you've made suggestions on things that just didn't sit right with me.
Yeah.
And, you give me a ton of good information, and you've really helped, grow my business significantly because I didn't know. And here's a perfect example. I didn't know what I didn't know. and I didn't know how to really run a business when I first started my dojo, and it was evident in the numbers. And you can say that, well, it's just the economy, or it's just people today, they don't want to do it. But really, look at yourself. Take a step back and look at what are you doing? Because if it's not working, if you're not producing results, and that's really the gauge, right? Is if you're not having students, and if you're not making money, then what you're doing in business isn't working. And it's not the martial art that you're teaching, and it's not the it's not the economy, that has a little play. But last year was one of my best financial years.
It was your best year. It was your highest grossing year during COVID.
Yeah. So you can't use that as an excuse. I mean, you can, but it's not a valid one. And it's understanding how to get that symbiotic relationship between business and teaching. But you can adapt. You can find ways to do other sorts of motivational practices, or games, and other types of things that show recognition to students without having to compromise your technique.
Let's go into that. So I remember when I first met you, or soon after, we started talking about doing some sort of retention boosting strategies, and we talked about my perfect attendance award system. And I'm like, hey, if they come to 12 classes, they get a trophy. And you're like, we don't do trophies. Aikido is not a trophy school. So rather than shutting it down, I continually persisted, because you have to admit that I'm
a pain in the ass. I
do that often. But we were able to take the concept and adapt it so that it worked for you in your philosophy and what made you feel well. So we develop? Dog tags, right? Of some sort. Instead of doing trophies, we made these cool dog tags that they get if they show up, and different levels of the dog tags and so on, so that you felt okay with it, because it wasn't, breaking your tradition of, no competition, no trophies, no winning for nothing kind of thing. And we came up with it, and we figured out a way to make it work, and you've been using it.
Yeah. And it also markets the school. They wear the dog tag, and it has the dojo name on it. And, and so they feel proud about it. And so it also helps you out, and then we give t-shirts at one point, and we give a plaque of recognition, as they build. So although I was very resistant to
the initial concept,
right? I started thinking about, well, what is it about it that I didn't like?
Right.
And then once I deconstructed the whole process, I said, well, I'm okay with this. This is in line with my morals and my beliefs, and I didn't feel like X, Y, and Z compromised my system. So I said, okay, I can live with that. That makes sense to me. And there are still things that we discuss that I say, no, I don't feel comfortable with that. And so we brainstorm, and we think about how to evolve it.
And also too, I think there was a point in time, and correct me if I'm remembering it incorrectly, but where you had approached your teacher and said you'd like to add in some interim belts or striping to be able to give them more, because there was a long period of time that they go without any belt recognition and so on. So you had to actually approach him, right, and ask permission, and then you had to sell him on the concept of doing it and not changing the curriculum in any way or the ranking system, but just adding in some interim kind of achievements, right? And you did that as well.
Yeah, and I at first I didn't feel good about that, because I was like changing, things. But then I thought, well, I'm not, from white belt to black belt. By the time they're black belt, they're going to have all the same information. And during a belt test, they're actually getting tested more often. So that means that their standards have to be higher to maintain from rank to rank.
Right.
So it actually, in some regards, helped me maintain a higher standard, by constantly looking at the quality of their technique and their performance. So,
Right.
so I got permission to do that, and so now people are actually staying a little bit longer, I feel, because they're progressing, and they're seeing a progression,
Right.
as opposed to waiting a year or two before they get a promotion. Now
Right.
maybe they're getting 2 a year, or 2 to 3 a year, or something like that, or so they feel more appreciated.
Why don't you guys explain the dog tags to me, because that sounds very interesting.
But we can't share that information.
I'm
Okay,
sorry.
gotcha.
You have to try next level coaching. I'm sorry.
Gotcha. So it's proprietary. I understand.
Well, I'll tell everybody online my perfect attendance system, which
Right.
I have that online if anyone wants to get the whole entire system. It's like $29 or something like that. So what I did was, if people, let's say my little warriors could come twice a week, so they could make 8 classes a month. If they make 8 classes, and it doesn't matter, they could miss a month in between and do it again. But if they make 8 classes, they get a trophy and they get a certificate. After they've gotten 3 small trophies, the 6-inch trophies, they turn them in, and then they get a bigger trophy, a 12-inch trophy. And what that does is, one, I recycle my trophies, so there's less cost out of pocket because I'm getting them back. And 2, it teaches them to give in order to get. And then they get their big trophy. Once they have 3 big trophies, then this is how we just switch the trophies out for dog tags with Soke Dai, and then they get a plaque and they get T-shirts. My kid has perfect attendance and blah blah blah. So it's just another physical tool that we use to motivate the students. And when I was really good at this, by the way, we don't do it as well as we should right now. We would always say, "Hey, Mrs. Jones, you're 10 away. You're 2 classes away from perfect attendance. Why don't you come in extra class this week and next week so you could make it?" Like, we'd encourage them based on them getting the award, because the kids, and by the way, kids through adults, we give them to everybody. And the adults are hysterical. They're like, I don't want this trophy. It's I'm just happy that you recognize me. As they're white-fisted, not holding on to it so tight, they walk out the door. Going, I thought you didn't want the trophy. I'm like, they're outside. So,
well, I like the dog tag idea because it sounds less expensive.
Yeah.
I also like the dog tag idea because, like you said, they're wearing it around their neck. Do you give them a chain, or what is that?
Yeah, they get a little chain, and then they get a custom printed a dog tag. So I have 2 colors. So the blue ones are kind of the first tier, and then the black ones are a little bit better. And so they turn in the blue ones after, and then they'll get the black one. And if you want the people who make mine, I can talk to you off the air, and
Okay.
I can give you that information of that company that does it for me.
Okay.
Yeah, so they get 3, and then what do they do? And then they get, or how does it work? How did you change that slightly? So it's dog tag.
Yeah, so they'll get 1 blue the first month. The second month they'll get a second blue one. Then they turn it in, and they'll get a black one on the 3rd month, and then a second black one on the 4th month. And then they turn those in, and they get like a gold coin, and it goes up from there.
Yeah. So he adapted, and that's what I love about it, is because he took the system and some of the things that didn't work for him, spiritually or whatever, it just didn't sit with you. You adapted it so that now it's an integral part of your retention strategies.
Well, as soon as you said dog tag, I was thinking about our friend, former Navy SEAL, Kenny Bigby, and I thought, man, dog tags would be perfect for his school.
Oh my God. Yeah, that's true. You should talk to him about that. That'd be great. By the way, I just saw him on the news. He just did that Hudson River swim again.
Oh, did he do it already?
Yeah, I think I saw some. Well, I saw videos of him on his Instagram.
Okay.
Yeah, crazy, right? So yeah. So you have any last questions, Wayne? Because we have like 4 minutes left.
What? Okay, so being a traditional school owner, right? I know that there was some things that Allie had kind of pressed you on that you talked about. You can give necessarily everything specific, but for another traditional school owner listening to this, what were some big hangups that you had about making some changes that now you wish you would have made, X number of years ago? You know what I mean?
Yeah. So, well, one of the, I mean, this seems so ridiculous in hindsight. I remember this. very vividly, Ali, you and I having this conversation, and it was about break falling at the beginning of class. We do like repetitive break falling the first part of class after we stretch, and it's just down, up, and I was saying, some of the people didn't like that, and he said, well, why don't you just let them do every other one, and then why don't you wait a month before they get thrown by somebody else? And I'm like, no, I'm like, they can suck it up. And, I'm trying to make tough students here. And he said, I remember he said, well, if you can get them to stay 6 months longer because they aren't frightened to fall because you ease them into it, isn't that going to accomplish the goal? And then you can toughen them up over time. And so, so that, kind of permeated into other things where my white belts were, I was making them stay in their rank a long time before, almost to the point where they were doing their techniques like black belts, and so they weren't being tested at all, and so I had to allow myself to allow them to be tested and realize that there's a spectrum there, and I'm not saying this because I think that my students are the best or anything, but I remember there was an event in a Japanese organization that I belonged to at the time, and they were coming to Pennsylvania, and it was a black belt organization, and there was a couple hundred, black belts there, all training in different arts, and I brought orange belts, which were, maybe 3 ranks in, and they were the only colored belts in the whole event for the weekend. And we took a jiu-jitsu class with another instructor, and black belts from that system were asking my students how to do their techniques better. And so, and that was because I'm so rigid with them. But if they're doing their techniques better than black belts in another system, and I'm not saying that my students are the best or anything like that, but I had to look at, was I really consistent with the ranking system, and I'm not saying I watered down my things now, but I also realize, as I'm more experienced, what a brown belt should look like, what a green belt should look like, what a white belt should look like, and what that caliber is. And by the time they're black belt, well, they should better be, damn good, and they should be able to defend themselves against, the average attacker, So, but having to make that realization for me was challenging, and my students will tell you that I don't give belts away. You gotta really, my tests are hard, and they appreciate that.
But the major shift, though, I think for you at that time was to understand that a white belt is just a white belt, right? You had to be okay with them being just a white belt and not wanting them to be better than black belts, right? And then, and we were scaring them away with advanced level training because they were quitting because they weren't getting tested. They were falling when they shouldn't have. You were hitting many of the different fears: fear of failure, fear of falling, fear of loud noises, and all that stuff. And when you adjusted that, you started to see more people stay longer that would have quit a long time ago. So that's why your enrollment has been growing, because you are filling that hole in the bucket in the early stages, right?
Exactly. And ultimately, if you can say that by, black belt, which just means you've learned the basics, if you can, by the time they're black belt, make them look to the caliber that you want them to be, then you did good.
Yeah.
And if you can get them to stay longer, because you did that, then your business is going to thrive from that. And you're going to make them happier, and they're going to stay, longer than if you, put all that on them as a white belt.
Love it.
Well, and it goes back to what we talked about before. It gives you the opportunity to have a deeper, longer lasting relationship with them and make more of an impact on them, as well as, their interaction with you is going to make an impact on you.
Yeah. Yeah. The more we can, keep them in the dojo, the more lessons they're going to adapt into their own, life.
I love it. Great interview. Thank you for sharing. I appreciate it.
It's an honor.
Any final things, Dwayne, or no?
No, I mean, I appreciate you taking time to do it, even through some of my technical difficulties, and then your one technical difficulty. So, but I appreciate your patience, and so
it's my honor, and I really appreciate you considering me and having me on anytime.
Thank you very much. So, all right, Dwayne and David Soke Dye, and we'll chat with you soon. And,
well, before we go, you have a book, right? Or at least one.
A few books.
Five books.
Okay. All right. So drop that information. What are the books? How can people get access to those?
Sure. So the newest book is Aikido's Hidden Ground Techniques, which is available on Amazon. And there's also a DVD, which you can watch that has, some instructional and demonstrative parts of the video. And you can also get the video on Amazon. You can even watch it on Amazon Prime. You can watch the video. You can buy the video part of it. So if you want to do that, feel free. Also, Discover Your Power is another one that's on Amazon. I wrote a kid's book, I Can Learn Karate, Martial Arts First Step for Kids. And then Modern Masters of the Martial Arts, which features over 50 different martial arts and their different styles. It's a beautiful coffee table book. So you can get that on my website, karatelehighvalley.com, as well as my first book, which is Enter into Aikido, which you can only get through me. I think it's out of print now. The publisher went out of business at the time. They're out of business now. But so I have a couple copies left of that if people are interested.
Excellent. Thanks for sharing that with us. And Allie, thank you for, go ahead.
I just posted that with your website in the comments so that people could check it out. I was going to say, Dave, thank you so much. I appreciate it. Dwayne, awesome as always. 290 episodes. We have to do something big for our 300th episode. I don't know, maybe have cake on air or something, or
there we go. Yeah,
celebrate somehow. Right? Give out maybe 50 free shirts to our 50 listeners or whatever. We'll do something around 300.
I'll eat cake, and you'll have to eat hamburger. No, just kidding.
Vegan cake.
I know, I'm just kidding.
I watched. We were at my wife's family's her dad was 81 yesterday, his birthday. So they all had ice cream cake, and I sat there and watched them because I can't eat it. So I'm so sorry. I'm like, it's okay. I'm used to it. So I sat there and watched them enjoy their ice cream cake.
There's a really good place called Vegan Treats, which they make totally vegan desserts. And
oh, yeah?
You would never know that they're vegan. They're amazing.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Very
I'll have
cool.
to send you one.
All right. Thank you.
All right. Thanks, guys.
Take care. Sayonara, everyone. Thanks for listening. Take care.
All right. Bye.
For another episode of Martial Arts School Owner Talk Podcast. This would not be possible if it weren't for the support of our amazing sponsors. Please check out EliteInsights.com for all your website needs. LeadHunterMedia.com, your online digital marketer and content provider. Academy Kings BJJ Growth Consulting and Management at GrowMyAcademy.com. SparkMembership.com, the best darn software for school owner manager on the planet. GetKarateStudents.com, a martial arts growth consulting company for all your school systems. We will see you next time.